Open wide for some soccer!
I can't do it. We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
5, 4, 3.
Watching my life passing right in front of my eyes. Hell of a story.
Hello, hello.
Or is it
Welcome to Open Wide for Some Soccer. My name's Seth Vertelny. Alongside me, Paulo Maurer, Thomas Floyd. It's Wednesday. We didn't do the show Monday. We almost did the show yesterday. So here we are with a hump day delight coming your way.
Yeah, this whole podcast is just falling apart. It's a miracle that we can even do one show, I think.
Did you see the movie Hump Day? I heard it was good, but I never watched it.
Who's in Hump Day?
Is that a movie?
It sounds like an
It
Adam
is.
Sandler vehicle.
I think it's a Duplass production.
What's a Duplass production?
The Duplass brothers. They've made a bunch of movies in the mumblecore genre. They do the HBO show Togetherness. Nothing.
No idea. Yeah.
Google them after.
Who's in
yeah.
the movie?
I think. Well, let me look it up because I'm not 100% sure.
Off to
know-
another strong start here on Open Wide for Some Soccer.
You know, the great thing about Hump Day is if you wanted to make a porn parody of that, you wouldn't have to change the title.
It stars Mark Duplass and is directed by Lynn Shelton. Trying to think of what you would have seen Mark Duplass in. He was in Zero Dark 30 randomly. He was on The League on FX.
Okay.
You would know
The
him
League
if
is
you
one
saw
of those shows that everybody tells me that I'll enjoy, and then I watch, and I'm just like, this is terrible. There've been a couple shows like you think I'd like a show like The League because I like. Do you watch Workaholics?
Not really, no.
You?
No, I've heard it's good.
Yeah, it's
just
pretty good.
Not
It's
my
pretty good.
rotation yet.
Have you seen Baskets yet?
No. I've heard that's good too.
Thomas?
I've been watching Baskets. FX is on a roll right now with Baskets and The People versus O.J. Simpson.
Man-Seeking Woman.
Yeah, but I've only seen a couple of those, but I thoroughly enjoyed them.
I am entranced by The People versus O.J. Simpson.
I think it's
Oh.
good. I think it's
Well,
very
in
good.
and-
particular John Travolta's role in The People versus
He's
O.J.
not,
Simpson.
Okay.
He has to be the worst actor.
I was
in that
about to
movie.
say-
There's also a supercut out there of David Schwimmer's character saying juice over
yeah.
and over.
Travolta is so cartoonish in that part. It's ridiculous.
He's pretty good though.
I mean, the thing is, he's cartoonish, but I'm compelled to continue watching him.
All I know is it's a hell of a world where we can watch David Schwimmer say, "Your Uncle Juice loves you" to a child Kim Kardashian in a
My favorite part about that show is how they keep putting the Kardashians in other than Robert, even though they had nothing
for no
to do with
reason.
any of it.
for no reason.
The last couple episodes, they thankfully have kind of tailed off from
Yes.
that tendency.
Yeah, I didn't see last night.
So you guys are slightly older than me. You remember the OJ trial. I have basically no memory of it. I was, I think, 4 or 5 at the time.
I was,
And so watching this, I'm just like, what's
year
going to
was-
happen next?
What year were you born in?
88.
88. Well, you know he gets acquitted, right?
Oh, you just ruined
God
it.
damn it.
Spoiler
Sorry.
alert.
No,
But I mean, you also know that he did it, right? These are
the things I knew going in were Bronco chase, the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit.
The only Bronco chase that Thomas has ever seen is Bronco Boskovic chasing after people.
I was not aware of
Dude, this was
being
must-
the Kardashian family's rise to fame.
This was like
and-
must-see television. I mean, we're not going to go into detail about
Right.
this, but I definitely remember. I came home from school. I was in middle school, and my mother was just every single day. My mother was watching the trial live on Court TV, and the verdict. We were in school. They let us watch the verdict.
Same.
We're in fucking like 6th grade
Same.
or something like that. You know,
Same.
like
I was in.
what is
I was in
the two things I remember seeing at school on those VCRs rolled around on carts with TVs are the O.J. Simpson verdict and the Challenger explosion.
Yeah,
Like,
see-
I feel like they didn't show us anything that wasn't disturbing.
I
Like,
grew up and we had to watch all these space launches on delay because of the Challenger.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they showed them to you guys at all.
That's
you know?
horrible. Is anybody still listening right now, or are we just sort of talking to ourselves?
Anyways, now that we've gotten the OJ talk out of the way.
Yeah.
MLS is back.
MLS
MLS is back.
Yeah. So
I feel like it never left. I feel like it's like, your in-laws or something that just.
yeah, Saturday was a veritable soccer orgy. I mean,
You mean Sunday?
yeah. Sunday.
There was no MLS.
I guess our
on Saturday.
soccer Sunday marketing didn't get through to you, huh?
right. I mean, I only watched a couple games.
Did you guys notice, by the way, that Simon Borg is no longer doing the instant replay
Yeah, it's
segment?
Dunny.
Yeah, I saw
It is
that. he's-
Dunny. I love Brian Dunseth, but I feel like Borg was the perfect fit for that.
Yeah, he better have a damn good
Brian
reason.
Dunseth is like the nicest guy in MLS media. He's great.
Sure.
Great at what he does. He needs to yell more.
Yeah, exactly.
He needs to honor the legacy of the man before him.
Anyways, so MLS.
So should we start with a little DC United?
Let's get that out of the way because they got absolutely eviscerated by the LA Galaxy, which is nothing new.
They did.
They were good for
haven't-
55, 60 minutes or
Wait, so
so.
they haven't won in LA. How long has it been now?
Since like 1973.
Yeah. When it was, I think the Diplomats beat the Aztecs
Right,
at the
yeah.
Rose Bowl. It has been though since I think 2006 or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
So yeah, I mean, as Thomas mentioned, it was going okay for a while. They were up 1-0 at halftime. They seemed to be doing what they wanted to do. And then the last 30, 35 minutes, it just kind of started to fall apart. It was almost like it was the CCL and the Galaxy were a Mexican team or something. What were some things that you guys noticed from this game? I'll tell you, even though they lost by 3 goals, there were, for me, some moments to be optimistic about as a DC United fan going forward this season. I thought they definitely had some nice moments in the attacking third in the first half, 50, 60 minutes of the game. I think that you can see that some of the new additions they have are going to be upgrades for their attack. When you're talking about Acosta, Nagel looked decent. Nyarko had some moments. Did you guys think that there was enough to take out of this in a positive sense, or are you more focused on the way things kind of collapsed late on?
In terms of the positives, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about Nick DeLeon as a central midfielder. That was something I was pretty skeptical of coming into this season because he had played that role sporadically over the last couple years and never particularly impressed me. He still seemed like more natural winger, but this was the first game in my mind where he really looked to own that role for at least the first half. He really was the most dominant player in the game, where the other central midfielders included guys like De Jong and Gerrard. It was impressive, and he didn't put together a full 90 minutes of that, but it's something to build off going forward.
Yeah, this was actually a question we got in our voicemail box.
Oh, we should.
Hey, it's Amir from Maryland,
Hi, Amir.
suburbia. Just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Nick DeLeon at center mid, because I'm getting either he was amazing or he was absolute shit.
Okay, so
I don't think
so.
it was
All
the
right,
second
so
one.
the fact that you're seeing that either he's amazing or absolute shit just means that you have Twitter, because that's what people do with everything on Twitter. The people who said he was absolute shit are just watching a different soccer game.
Yeah, I thought he lost gas as the game went on, but especially in the first half, he was quite impressive. Yeah, I mean, he's finding the game. He's discovering pockets of space in the middle and getting more of a feel for that position. And as he continues to do that, it's only going to be better, because on the physical side, he has the attributes that you want. Like, he has strength in the middle. He has the work ethic. He can win those tackles. It's just about learning to play that position, to pick out passes.
We should mention Amir from Maryland left a message on our new Open Wide for Some Soccer voicemail. You may be listening to this show live, but you can't call in. However, what you can do is leave us a message. The number is 708 LTOWFSS. You could also tweet at us, and we will make you famous and read your tweet on air.
Although
live.
it's dawning on me. Just call that number now if you want to ask a question, because it'll just call it. Just call it. If questions, whatever, dial that number. We'll see if it works.
Yeah, maybe you'll be able to get on the air.
Yeah, I have a suspicion I can just answer with Google Voice and start talking to you. So in any case, yeah, I think Nick's going to take a while to sort of fall into that role. Something we didn't put here on our list of things to talk about, but I want to get your thoughts on is, and Thomas, you just wrote a piece on him last week. Marcus Halsey, not even in the 18,
Yeah.
and
apparently a knee sprain.
Okay,
per today's news.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's strange because at first
they said coach's decision.
At first
did
they
they?
said there was no
Oh.
injury.
That's what
and
DC
then,
United told me that night. They said coach's decision.
and then a couple days later, it turns out he's suffering. I think they called it a mild MCL sprain.
So I'll let you guys make sense of this. When I went out to training last week in advance of the CCL second leg, I asked Benny what went behind the decision to go with Sarvas and DeLeon in central midfield, and he actually went like, as opposed to who? And I was kind of like, perhaps Halsey, and he had to think about it for a second, and then eventually went into an answer that factored in his fitness and the fact that he just had a second child born, and the fact that at the time he was nursing a calf injury. But I thought it was somewhat telling that, in Olsen's mind, it wasn't even a decision. Like at this point, Halsey, whether it's because of form, fitness, injury, has sort of fallen off the depth chart in central midfield, and he feels committed to Sarvas and DeLeon.
Well, it's funny because even then when Birnbaum, when we thought Birnbaum was going to go out of the game with a concussion, and I still have no idea to this day why he was in for the rest of the game, because it looked like he severely smashed his head into his defender.
I thought that was going to be a weeks, if not months, injury.
Yeah,
And it was a minute's injury.
in any case, I thought it was funny because I tweeted out, "Well, it'd be nice to have Marcus Halsey right now, wouldn't it?" And immediately, every United fan imaginable on Twitter tells me I'm much more comfortable with having Opari there than him. I just think it's interesting, the perception of him at this point.
Yeah.
Well, he just hasn't really made his mark yet. He hasn't shown anything, and because of a variety of reasons.
You just never know with Ben though whether it's he hasn't made his mark because he hasn't been given a chance by Olsen to do that.
Yeah, there were some injury issues last year.
Last season, I think what really concerned people was once he got into the lineup, which was after Arnaud's initial concussion problems. Yeah, Halsey was a game in, game out starter down the stretch and into the playoffs, and he was okay. Like, he wasn't overly impressive. And then going into this season, and that piece you referred to, I talked to him and Benny, and there was a lot of optimism around, all right, European players coming into the league, they usually don't find the rhythm until the second season. Last year, you had a fragmented preseason and an early injury, and you felt like he was catching up all year. And now it's just history repeating itself, seemingly.
Sometimes I feel like this league, there are so many built-in excuses for players to underperform that it really is like, I mean, there's naturally less pressure than there is in Europe. But, a player coming over here when they have this built-in safety net of, like every other player has done poorly the first 6 months, it just makes it easier to do that. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. It could be just an observation, but
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it seems like Sarvas kind of has that defensive central midfield spot on lock. He just seems like the kind of guy that Ben's going to want to put in his lineup, a la Davy Arnaud.
Do you notice that he Marcelo Sarvas, who's never been a particularly physical player, was like, I think, doing his best to channel Davy Arnaud the first half of that game, because he definitely got stuck in a couple times on a couple players. That's not something you've seen in previous years.
Yeah, if Sarvas can grow into that role, it actually could work out really well. I was a little skeptical over that acquisition when it first happened, but once they complemented it with the Acosta signing, and it became clear that Acosta was going to be the new exciting playmaker, and that they were grooming Sarvas for this deep-lying playmaker role, it seems like a more natural fit for a guy who's 34 years old and maybe doesn't have the legs to get up and down in a more attacking position.
Let's go back to this voicemail box. Go ahead, Seth. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm going to throw out a name here, and
Sure.
this might be the only time that we mention it all season. Colin Martin, he's a guy that was pretty hyped up when he signed with United as a homegrown player, and it seemed like, this off season, people were talking about this might finally be the year that we get a chance to see him get a run, see what he has at the MLS level. He's 21 now, is not particularly young anymore.
Yeah.
And just seems like, it's he's not in the plan.
I heard towards the end of last year that from a former United academy product that most of United's youth players and Colin in particular are sort of possibly angling to get out of that situation.
I wouldn't blame him.
No, of course, because Ben at this point has a reputation for not playing his kids and playing people like Marcelo Sarvis. So I think it's telling that it wasn't even when you heard people talking about DC's lack of central midfield options this offseason, people didn't even mention Colin Martin.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about the central midfield, and just he's not even in the picture.
Yeah, so Martin is interesting because positionally, I feel like they still haven't figured out where he's supposed to be. In theory, he's someone who could compete for one of those two box-to-box holding roles, but also United tends to play him in the Acosta/Buescher position, and maybe it says a lot that they pick Buescher in the draft and immediately seem to trust him more than Martin in that position.
I will say that Buescher has more of a pedigree than probably anybody that came out of the draft this past year.
Yeah, and then also Martin maybe can play out wide, but when he does, it doesn't seem like the most natural fit either. So it's going to be a continuing issue for the team to figure out exactly where he factors in.
I asked a former United player about Colin Martin, and one of his comments, jokingly obviously, was, I just think that kid needs to move out of his mother's basement. So that's possibly another one. Let's go to this voicemail box again, because certainly I think the biggest issue going into the game in LA was how well Acosta would do. So.
Hi guys, do you think Luciano Acosta will be the first international player to break Casper and Olsen's streak of foreign signings not working out? Second question, will Olsen-era TCU ever win another two-leg series? Thanks. Bye.
Both good questions. Let's do the second one quickly first.
How many in a row has it been that they've lost? Five.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going all the way back to the last one they won was the infamous Snow series in 2012.
Right. So you have 3 MLS playoff series and 2 CCL series they've lost since
the
then.
last time DC United won a two-leg series, Marcelo Saragossa was starting, and so was
Robbie
Leonard
Russell.
Pahoy,
Robbie Russell had the game-winning assist.
Yeah.
There always has to be somebody like that in the lineup. It's been a lineage from Saragossa to Arnaud, now to Sarvas.
Right.
I think this to me is very simple. Okay, I think the reason that they haven't won a two-leg series is because they play a style of soccer that works for the first 2/3 of the year, and then literally every team in MLS figures them out. And by the time they go into the playoffs, they're not scoring goals anymore, and it becomes increasingly difficult. That 2012 team actually had a little bit of flair. You had players like Dero, Pontius in his prime. I think the teams in the past 2 or 3 years that Ben constructs to just sort of chop their way through the first 2/3 of the year. By the time they get to the playoffs, they're an open book, And I think just to put this out there, I think going forward this year it might be a problem. I think they're already figured out. You know what I mean? So they're going to have to. I just genuinely believe the team's style of play. Tactically, DC is going to have to evolve this year, or they're just going to suffer.
The other issue is DC United is not a team that their style lends well to aggregate series. Like, they have a habit of they getting blown out on the road, as we saw this past weekend, and in general last season. I'm double checking this. I believe they were the only team in MLS to make the playoffs with a negative goal differential. Yeah, they were the only team at -2. So they're a team that they grind out a lot of 1-goal wins, and then when they lose, they can lose badly. So when you get to an aggregate series, that's not a great situation because you lose that first leg by multiple goals, then it doesn't matter if you grind out the 2-1 win in the second leg.
Right. So let's get to the first question about Acosta. I mean, it's only been 2.5 games or something with him, but it seems unlikely that he will just flame out. Like, he seems too good that he's going to make an impact, and he's going to make a positive impact, and he's probably going to be the focal point of DC United's offense this season. He's got ability on the ball that nobody else on the roster has, and you can see that right away. I think the question for me is he going to get the ball enough playing in that withdrawn forward role? And when he gets the ball in dangerous positions, is he going to have the end product? We haven't really seen him getting any goal-scoring chances, any goal-scoring positions, really, in the first few games.
I mean, so much of this has to do with how his dynamic comes along with Fabi. Although, having said that, again, I mean, you got a situation against LA where Spindler didn't even start.
Yeah.
And I think... and what I say, Acosta played a lot of preseason minutes, and he played a lot with Espindola, and you just didn't see their dynamic coming along at all. To me, it seemed like they weren't on the same page, but it was very clear that Acosta was sort of half a step ahead of Espindola.
Yeah.
So I think so much hinges on that. I mean, I
agree. I wonder if they have the makeup to gel, or if United will need to perhaps experiment with different formations, which really hasn't happened during the Ben Olsen era, or experiment with different forward partners. If perhaps Acosta and Nagel become a potential duo and they bring Espindola off the bench more. Again,
this is what I'm saying about their tactics have to evolve.
Yeah.
The fact that you're sitting here saying that they haven't played, aside that they've never played a different formation. I mean, their roster is completely different than it was 4 years ago. There's been constant roster turnover, and the style they play has remained the same.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if he sticks at that withdrawn forward position, because he does seem like the kind of player who would be more of a natural fit as a pure number 10 with not a lot of defensive responsibilities. I think you see him get the ball and he might be farther up the field, but does he have a lot of options to pass it to in a straight 4-4-2 formation? I'm not sure if Spindola is really the right guy to be the only person ahead of him too, because he likes to drift wide a lot and he's not getting himself into prime goal scoring opportunities and prime positions. So it'll be interesting to see how that partnership evolves.
It's an interesting dynamic, and not to overplay this comparison of him to Giovinco, which happens a lot, but Giovinco...
This guy's like, I think I told you the other day, he's like caffeine-free diet Giovinco Light or something like that, which is still tastes pretty good. I don't know.
Giovinco has found a lot of success with Toronto, actually as a lone striker. It's when they partnered him with Altidore and tried to maybe make something work that wasn't quite there. What was when Toronto had problems last year. I wonder if DC United is going to fall into a similar situation of trying to make him and Fabi work, or if they're willing to try different things and different tactics to really get the most out of Acosta.
Yeah, I talked to a sort of a sidebar, but I talked to a former United player who kind of shed some light on playing with Espindola, and it said, he said that while it's incredible to play with him and he's an incredibly talented player, he's maddening to play with because you literally never know where he's going to be. He drifts out wide so much. He, sometimes he'll tuck inside, then he'll get frustrated and drop deeper to try and find the ball.
Right.
So I think it might be interesting to see what are the how that dynamic comes along. Like I said,
let's move on a little bit to the goalkeeping situation, because I think this is going to be an interesting one with the addition of Charlie Horton. Dykstra again against LA. I feel like this has kind of become a theme with him, where he gives up these goals that aren't quite howlers, but we say, maybe he could have done better. I'm thinking particularly of McGee's first goal where Dykstra kind of came off his line and got caught in no man's land, making it easier for McGee to lob him. On the penalty kick, he just sort of stuck out his foot and took McGee down. That wasn't really great goalkeeping either.
Incredibly stupid.
So, I saw a quote today from Olsen suggesting that Horton was actually competing with Wara right now for the backup spot. You would imagine that's just because Horton hasn't been with the club for several months. And he's just trying to get back in the swing of things. How soon do you guys think it's going to be until Horton is really going to challenge Dykstra for that number one spot?
I mean, Thomas and I talked about this. When he talked to Ben preseason before he even signed any keepers, after he knew that Bill had gone down, he did say, I have full confidence in Andrew and blah, blah, blah. But he was very on his own, went on to say, we want to find someone to push Andrew for minutes. And I think he sort of puts that narrative out in the media so Dykstra knows that he's not, this is not a guaranteed job, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, it's not going to take very many 3-4 goal losses till, people start searching for options. And it's not going to be Wara.
Yeah, and I mean, Dykstra, I think we've seen what he can do. I mean, he's basically a backup level goalkeeper, and presumably a guy like Horton, who's been with the U.S. national team at the youth level, would be an upgrade. Not that any of us have ever seen him play before, but I mean, just look at the pedigree that he should be better.
And also, we saw him after the Champions League game. He is large.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
We saw him walking around the the boxes, and he has the physical tools to be a top-notch goalkeeper. It looks like he has the look of someone who really could be a standout player if he puts it together on the fundamental side.
So you heard it here first, guys. We have read Charlie Horton's Wikipedia page. He is tall, confirmed. Before we move on to general MLS stuff, I think we should discuss the move of one Perry Kitchen to the Jam Tarts.
I'm so torn on this, man, because I feel like it's so we don't know what his salary is, right? But I mean, I dug a little bit, and Rangers, Celtic, and Jam Tarts. The salaries there are. There's a gross disproportion between those three teams and the rest of the SPL. I think the average salary at we'll just call it, I'll switch to calling them Hearts now.
Yes, their name is actually Hearts, or I think it's Heart of Midlothian.
Hearts of Midlothian.
Midlothian, but for some reason their Twitter is Jam Tarts. I don't know what the hell that means.
That's probably some nickname. I don't know.
Yeah, but why
it's like
does their nickname sound like a breakfast pastry?
So the average salary there is like around $200,000, 200,000 pounds a year, so whatever, $260,000. And you figure Perry's making more than that, I'm sure, So
but
it's a move motivated by finances, and I don't entirely blame him for doing it. At the same time,
I mean, at DC United, from what Steve Goff was reporting, made it sound like he was going to get offered something in the I mean something that would put him at
what I'm saying is I feel like we have to assume he's making more than that. Now, of course, there's a chance that he just played, that DC played his bluff basically, and that then he's like totally screwed, and now he's making less money playing in Scotland, which, by the way, is like the league that gets tossed around as like one of the only ones that's worse in Europe than MLS. So
I think he just wants to get to Europe and then
figure it out.
I think he's hoping this is a springboard.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean,
Colorado Rapids 2017,
I can't blame him for moving on to Europe. I think he had sort of reached his limit with the MLS as far as how much he was going to grow. I think, the Hearts actually were very honest in saying that, he had a move lined up to Germany and it fell through, and therefore he was able to sign with Hearts. Whether it was Bundesliga or second division, I guess we're not entirely sure. I'd be kind of surprised if it was Bundesliga. But yeah, it's a level where he should be able to start and do well, which I guess is beneficial in and of itself, and as opposed to maybe going to a higher league and really struggling for minutes. But it did seem like what Perry needed after leaving DC United was a club where he would kind of struggle and have to fight for minutes, just because he was such an automatic starter here his entire time that I thought it would have been good for his development to go somewhere where he really had to fight it out for every minute at central midfield.
I think I can only imagine what Ben Olsen thinks of this move, which is
Off the record, I thought it was a joke.
I'm wondering, so do you guys think that Perry is ultimately happy with the situation, or do you think it was a matter of he perhaps overvalued himself within MLS and then got stuck in a situation
I think
like
that's
this?
the more likely of the two scenarios.
Yeah, because on the money that was being reported, where he would have been at either a high, like toward the maximum salary, if not above it, with his contract being bought down with allocation money or what have you. I mean, if he was going to be making that much, that seems like he was perhaps overvaluing himself, because in MLS, as much as DC United fans loved him and as loyal a servant as he has been for United over the past few years, to me, he never really reached the upper echelon of MLS D-mids alongside Alonso, Beckerman, Trapp, Juninho. To me, he was always a notch below those guys, and it would have been a stretch for DC United to offer him any more than what was reported.
I don't really give a shit.
I also thought it was pretty hilarious during the US's winter friendlies how both games they tried to get him in with about 30 seconds left.
Right.
And
he looked completely exasperated the second time. He was just
Yeah.
like, what am I even,
And it was just so obvious that he was on the open market and they wanted to increase the number of caps he had.
Yes, I know.
Well, let's talk about some general MLS. What should we talk about?
Well, I
Tommy
think,
Mac.
yeah, we should start with NYCFC.
So much Thomas McNamara.
So much Thomas McNamara. Both of you guys have written articles on NYCFC in the past couple
I think
days.
Thomas was the one who suggested just euthanizing Frank Lampard. It seems like a good. I saw him. I went to one of the Hudson Derby games last year. Derby, whatever you want to say.
Is that the official name for it?
Hudson River. I think it's Hudson River.
Has that emerged
Derby.
over
I remember watching Frank Lampard come off the field in like the 60th minute, and he just looked like so completely disoriented, tired, sweaty. Just like he looked like he had the flu or something. I don't know.
Defeated.
He turns 38 in a couple months.
Why did they sign him for $6 million?
It to me was well, I was gonna say inexplicable, but at the time, he was coming off being on England's World Cup squad, was still a spot starter, regular guy off the bench for Chelsea.
I mean, I feel,
but that was a year and a half ago now.
I feel like City got like the last 1/16 of a tank of gas that was in him.
City did?
Yeah, with that loan shit, and then he's just like a stalled out vehicle on the bench.
I think that's exactly right. Like at the age they signed him, he was already on the cusp of just
death.
Yeah. So the fact that they delayed his move for half a season, to me, that killed any momentum for that signing, and I can't imagine it being anything other than a bust.
Well, let's talk about NYCFC in general, because I did this long sort of preseason feature with Patrick Vieira, and one of the things that he left really clear was that he wants, and you hear a lot of coaches say this, but based on the way Patrick Vieira played, I believe him. He wants his team to play forward-thinking, aggressive, attacking football to sort of boss the game, and they did it. They actually did it.
Yeah. Asterisk against Chicago.
No, yeah, exactly.
And
they also
gave
allowed
up
3 goals.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we talked about this the other day. There's no way that if Chicago's one of the only teams in the league you can give up 3 goals against.
Right.
I don't even know that you can give them up against Colorado now because Tim Howard's going to be back there. So at least halfway through the year he is, you know.
Well, I think Zach McMath is pretty imposing.
Poor
so-
Zach McMath.
So what do we make of NYCFC's debut?
I mean, on the attacking side, there's a lot to be excited about. I think they have Pirlo playing at his best. We were chatting about this before the show. I think he came to MLS perhaps not fully understanding what he was in for, and he had a really bad first month. But now he kind of, got things together and looks like he's coming into this season, still in that classic Pirlo form of not doing a ton of defensive work, but still being able to control games distribution wise. And then I think Mixed Discrude and Tommy McNamara were extremely encouraging as the two center mids in front of him, doing a lot of the work defensively, winning balls, but also getting forward, getting into the attack. They each had a goal and an assist, and Discrude also had a pseudo assist where he chipped in the ball that led a Chicago player to bicycle kick it into his teammate's face, leading to
Mix, we'll talk about McNamara briefly. Again, I just put out a piece today on him, and it's one of those things where I guess the thing everyone says is, and Patrick Vieira put it best, I think, when he said, you look at this guy and you think, oh, okay. I laughed when he said that, I think another one of McNamara's teammates told me earlier in the day, you look at him and you just know he's not going to run by anybody. But then you see him with the ball at his feet and it's a totally different story. And like Vieira said, in the piece I put out today, the guy just has so much technical quality for a dude who looks like, as Eric Winalda put it yesterday, a co-ed tennis player. Just ridiculous, I mean, I don't know how Thomas McNamara cannot feel shit on at this point. I felt bad because I asked him in the interview thinking he would think it's funny. I was like, and I showed him the New York Times article from last year on my monitor. I said, so what did you make of this when the New York Times called you, and I quote, a thick mulleted midfielder? And his face just sort of sank a little bit. But then he went, I didn't even have a mullet. I mean, it's just inaccurate. Didn't deny the thick part, though.
The other thing with McNamara, so he made a couple incredible plays with the final ball, a wonderful long-range finish off the post, upper 90, and a fantastic cross to Discrude for his goal, in which he absolutely annihilated Matt Polster.
Yeah.
But aside from that, diving into the Opta, he went 44 for 47 passing. And you look at his chart, and it's not like he's playing, short passes, going backwards or sideways a lot. He had a very proactive passing game and was very efficient doing so.
So how does Patrick Vieira justify taking Tommy Mac off the field for Frank Lampard, or does he shift him out wide? What happens?
I can't imagine that happening. I think
So who is the sacrificial lamb that this elderly man displaces?
I think at this moment, NYCFC needs to bring Lampard off the bench until he shows he can play a 90-minute soccer game and keep up with the style of play they've established under Vieira. If they do that, the solution is probably to shift McNamara to the left flank, let Lampard play in the middle, and take maybe Tony Taylor off the field and make him a sub,
or Shelton. I mean, I think you take Taylor off there before Shelton.
But in that scenario, then you've got Lampard and Discrude as the two guys doing the defensive work in front of Pirlo, and I don't think that's going to work.
And realistically, McNamara didn't look the best last year out wide.
I thought he still was pretty good, but this is a better role for him. Because last year he put up surprisingly good numbers for the limited number of appearances he had.
Even Pirlo looked good.
Yeah, I mean, Pirlo looks like someone who realizes he has to be at a certain level to not only play well in MLS but to make Italy's Euro squad.
Yeah. And did you see he called a PK again?
Yeah, that was incredible.
You see that?
And
that's the second time he's done it.
Yeah,
and
Saunders was like, nope.
No.
Yeah.
Saunders pulled I got this. The old Matt Reese. It didn't work out.
Yeah. One more point before we move on from NYCFC. We are talking a lot about their central midfield, and we haven't even mentioned perhaps their best player all of last season, which was Poku. Where does he fit into this whole equation?
And,
I gotta interrupt real quick because Jurgen Klinsmann just tweeted, congrats to Perry on his new adventure. at Perry Kitchen at Jam Tarts.
Congratulations.
Link to Soccer by Ives piece.
Congratulations, Perry. You will never be called in again.
On his new adventure. God, Jesus Christ.
If we're talking about things that have happened while we're doing the show, Alex Morgan scored a absurd goal.
Somebody tweeted at us and said,
she brought down her chest. Just
she
volley.
juggled it over a defender.
It's called the old sombrero. Gave her the sombrero and then volleyed it.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So let's move on to TFC. We want to talk about them a little bit because once again, for about the third or fourth offseason in a row, they won the trophy for best offseason.
I picked them to be in MLS Cup.
Everyone's picking them to be in MLS Cup, even though they have only made the playoffs once, and that was because they finished sixth, and it wouldn't have made the playoffs any other season in MLS history. But they got a good win to start their season, going to New York against the Supporters Shield winners and winning 2-0. They maybe didn't boss the game completely, but some encouraging signs, and I think that their back line at least looks like it's going to be improved this year.
Drew Moore and Steve Beitashour add just stability. They're guys that you know what you're going to get out of, because in the past they have relied on a lot of foreign signings in central defense and out wide, and they just didn't work out. Last season, Kantari was their mid-season reinforcement, and he was a disaster. So now you have guys who, even if Drew Moore isn't going to be MLS Defender of the Year, he can hold his own in MLS. And Beitashour, I think, has kind of flown under the radar and consistently been a top 5 MLS right back for the past several years now. So I really like him in that role, especially considering last season they just had this rotating cast of problems at right back.
Yeah, worth mentioning too, they now have at least a guy who you talk about potentially eventually pushing for U.S. national team minutes and goal in Clint Irwin. Somebody say Clint Irwin? There we go.
Yeah, that's right.
Clinton Irwin.
Irwin.
Your pronunciation is
former
spot
FC Ottawa goaltender. Clint Irwin. Had an interesting conversation with him in Florida about his days playing just really, really extreme minor league soccer in Canada.
Did he tell you about the startup he was a part of in North Carolina?
Right, yeah.
He was at a startup where he would go to training with, I think it was maybe Charleston, and then I guess in South Carolina, and then after training he would go to this startup, and they had him just doing manual labor all day, ripping up carpet, and the glory of the American soccer pyramid.
There's also, that interview with him actually evolved into 15 to 20 minutes of talking about Donald Trump. on the record too, so I think I might actually, maybe next episode we'll play some of Clinton.
Is he a massive Trump supporter?
No, he was very careful not to reveal his political inclinations, but we spent most of the interview talking about how he thinks that MLS, soccer journalists in general just don't ask decent questions, that he's just so fucking tired of getting asked how the game was on Saturday, on Tuesday, and then on Friday, what do you think is going to happen on Saturday? So we ended up talking about politics and.
Can he even vote? He's Canadian now, right?
Is he?
That's how that works. I don't know.
Oh, okay, yeah. You go up there long enough, and
you renounce your citizenship as soon as you cross the border.
Even without revealing his political inclinations, the conversation centered around just how fucked up everything is with Donald Trump, which is something we can all agree on. So,
but you are going to get $100 worth of liquor out of this.
Vote Bernie Sanders, please. Vote Bernie Sanders. Vote Bernie Sanders.
So, Toronto FC. They didn't control the game the way I thought maybe they... Well, I don't know if I thought they would control the game on the road, but I thought with Will Johnson in there in this new system where they have a lot of technical players, more so on the field than in the past, that they would be a little better building out of the back, but maybe that's something that'll come along as they implement guys like Endo and Will Johnson and become more of a team and get Josie Altidore back to add his hold up play to the equation. So. I mean, if you're a Toronto fan, you have to like what you saw. Getting 3 points on the road against the Supporters' Shield winner is very encouraging. Even if it wasn't the prettiest game, it's good to know that their backline is sturdier than years past.
Yeah, so we talked about DC United, but maybe we should spend a couple minutes talking about the team that DC United played against, the LA Galaxy. An interesting debut for the Galaxy because I think even though they got a good result, and certainly the performance of Mike McGee was encouraging, I think there definitely were some question marks. First of all, Gio Dos Santos did not have a very good half, got taken off at halftime. I think it was because he was supposedly injured, but McGee was obviously a lot more effective than he was. Steven Gerrard, again, continues to look like he's about 57 years old. And then
he always has this concerned look on his face in the field. Do you see that? Just like he's worried,
Yeah, and then at center back you had a guy making his MLS debut, Dan Steers, who
I actually he had a very good performance against the Rochester Rhinos in the USL Championship last year. So I was familiar with him.
Right. So does he keep his spot ahead of Van Dam? I guess most concerning from a Galaxy perspective, I think, was the performance of Gerrard. We were talking about this a little bit before the show that last season when he was played a little more high up, he was more effective. But right now they have him sort of in this holding midfield duo with De Jong. And De Jong looked good. He covered a lot of ground. But, Gerrard was pretty lackadaisical, pretty slow. And if you're asking him to cover any sort of defensive ground, you could be asking for problems.
Maybe Gerrard will grow into that role as he gets a better feel for the system and gains fitness and further finds himself integrated into the rhythm of MLS. But I also think they might be facing a problem where he needs to play that role underneath the striker that he played at the start of his MLS tenure last summer. And now you have a Galaxy team where you either want Zardes or Dos Santos in that role. And on top of that, Mike McGee looked fantastic playing alongside Robbie Keane up top. So all of a sudden, you have this McGee-Keane combo that I think at least for the next match, you can't break up. And what do you do with Dos Santos? What do you do with Gerrard? Where do you fit these big-name players who are making millions of dollars onto the field to get the most out of them without sacrificing defensive stability, which is what has been happening for LA.
It's almost like it's not a good idea to give multi-million-dollar contracts to players over the age of 35.
I think we talked about this. They're just like there's so many roster mechanisms available. There needs to be some sort of like cap on elderly players.
I think again, it's what happens is players.
Hold on, real quick. By the way, they can exempt like 10 players from it, right? Like Messi, Ronaldo, Zlatan, but like Steven Gerrard should. These other players just.
I mean, we saw Drogba came to MLS.
He almost said the MLS.
I really had to stop myself.
He said a foreign player's name, and he almost just said. I think Drogba came to the MLS because
Drogba came to the Impact last summer.
Are you talking about Sacramento Republic FC forward
exactly.
Didier Drogba?
I think he was playing goal in training, so maybe they're grooming him for that position.
Lord.
Jesus Christ!
So I mean, he came to MLS, and I thought he was done, and he's pretty old, and he tore it up. So it's not impossible, but the issue in my mind is the pre-contract situation, where teams are making deals that seem smart at the time. And then the player doesn't arrive for another 6 months. And then when he does, it's that first half season almost always is a wash. And so then you're not actually getting the player at his best until a full year later. And when you're signing a guy who's 34 years old, and then he's going to be 35 by the time he actually gets fully integrated, you're not getting the player you thought you were signing.
Sure.
Yeah, and by the way, I think as good as Drogba was last year, and as well as things went in Montreal after he arrived, it might be the opposite this year. It's just not off to a promising start.
Right.
Yeah,
He's
but
already
I feel like I've learned to not presume anything.
Well,
you know?
yeah, but I mean, first of all, the fact that he is just saying I'm not going to play on turf is not a good thing. He's 38 years old. He was halfway to retiring this offseason.
I saw him in Florida, and he looked particularly laid back. I mean, just like, during training even, and
I feel like we're gonna get halfway through the season. He's gonna have played in maybe 7 or 8 games, scored a couple goals. It's gonna be Chelsea's off season. They're gonna make another inquiry to see if he wants to come and join as an assistant, and he's gonna beg Montreal to let him go back, and he will leave at midseason, retire, and join Chelsea in time for next season.
Joey Saputo, even when pressed on it, couldn't guarantee he'd be there the whole year.
Right.
I mean, he was just basically like, listen, I know as little as you do.
Yeah.
I think we're just all along for the Drogba ride.
In theory, it could work. Thierry Henry didn't play on turf his last, 2 or 3 seasons in MLS. It's just a weird situation where Montreal has 4 of their first 5 games are on turf, so they're in this strange situation where they know he's not going to see the field for a while. But the optics of it are not great, and it does have this feeling that he already has an eye on retirement, and that's never ideal.
I will say briefly about Montreal, even in loss, they looked good. All preseason, they looked very good.
They won.
Sorry. Did they?
Montreal
won.
They won 3-2 at Vancouver.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I got the 2 teams mixed up. They did look good. Also, Piatti's looked excellent out wide all preseason. I mean, I think with or without Drogba, Montreal are going to prosper this year.
They basically just have a second Drogba in Dominic Oduro.
Yeah, Jesus, man.
Their playing styles are remarkably similar.
Yeah. Thomas and I concluded that David Accam is basically Dominic Oduro. They both just get the ball and
except he's making DP money.
Yeah, accelerate into a blur and then just run over the end line or cross it into the supporters.
And 1 out of every 5 shots goes in the goal.
They have so much speed and raw talent that they still manage to put up decent numbers, but it's a fraction of what they could with any semblance of technical ability.
Yeah. So we have a tweet here, and this is a good opportunity to wrap it up. Holden Cribb asked us for hot takes on the new Javier and Dallas song. I think we need to end the show and have Javier and Dallas play us out.
All right.
Javier and Dallas, for those of you,
it's been 6 months or so.
It's been a while since we've heard from him, but for those of you who aren't aware, which is probably very few of you, Javier used to call us on a regular basis with original songs. He would have some sort of karaoke version of an old song and put new Open Wide for Some Soccer themed lyrics to it. And unbeknownst to anyone, really, a couple of days ago, he just put a new one up on YouTube, and somebody, I don't know who it was, found it, thankfully, and flagged it for us. So now we have it.
I'm trying to find it still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it is set to the
apparently
tune
it's
of,
Paul Caligiuri's birthday today.
Happy birthday, Paul, and sorry for getting you fired.
All right, here's the Javier Dallas song.
Yeah, so this is called
I think it's called Monday Open Wide.
Monday Open Wide, set to the tune of Friday I'm in Love.
I'm gonna just float out there that I don't 100% agree with a lot of some of the sentiments.
It gets a little strange in the last half of the song. So anyways, thanks for listening, and here's Javier and Dallas.
I don't care if Benny's blue, Hedge is great and Walker too. Klinsmann doesn't care about you. It's Monday Open Wide. Revs did not fall apart. New York Red Bull, break my heart. Josie doesn't even start. It's Monday, open wide. Will Trap wait? And Drogba magic will come late. Laren never hesitates. I don't care if John Brooks is black. Diego volley, heart attack. Wando never looking back. It's Monday, open wide. Dempsey, you can raise your head. DeMarcus Beasley, stay in bed. Davy Arno's almost dead. It's Monday, open wide. Pablo hates. T. Floyd, Javi, the dream date. Mike Bradley will Seth berate.